Hey there, this is Jurgen back for 8DO, and welcome to this walkthrough to the new Epic Dhol Ensemble. Much work has gone into this new redesigned, remastered, and reprogrammed version of the Epic Dhol that's been a fan favorite to a lot of musicians and composers all around. I have prepared a short demo that I'd like to show you before we dig a little deeper into the virtual instrument. And so here we go. Let's take a look at the instrument groups that have been included into the Epic Dhol. First, we have the master patch, which takes a combination of the specific articulations that have been recorded, such as the mallets, the hand articulations, and stick, brush, and crescendos, into a single patch that is an all-around good patch to use when you want to quickly switch between different articulations. Or make use of them. So what I'm going to do is I am enabling the sequencer. We'll talk about this one in just a bit, but I'm also going to step through the individual keys in the ranges because each of them, you'll be able to follow down here. Each of them have been assigned a particular articulation, a sample that's been recorded, and the sequencer helps us with playing that back. It's just a way for us to quickly step through that. Let's take a quick look at the individual instrument groups. First up are the mallets. When switching to the instrument, the keyboard shows us which keys have samples and articulations assigned to them. A number of velocity layers have been recorded, which are triggered by how hard the keys are hit. Next up are the hand played articulations, which have also been recorded with 15 velocity layers. The harder you hit the key, or the note is being triggered, the louder the sample, more dynamics are being reproduced. Next up are the sticks. Both sides of the drum have been recorded with additional articulations hitting the rims of the drum, and those are triggered in the upper registers of the keyboard. And here are the brushes. Again, there are velocity layers in effect, and especially with the brushes, it makes for a very nice effect, especially when you hit them very softly. And finally, the crescendos. Now, those are a bit different than the rest of the articulations. As you can see on the keyboard, they are broken up into different sections, each sounding a little different while also having various lengths. Velocity is also something that you can use to determine how loud or how soft these crescendos are playing back. There is one articulation that was recorded and looped, which you can find down here. The rest all have various lengths and include recorded brush crescendos. The mod wheel alters where the sample is started and can be used to shorten a particular crescendo to fit in with the tempo or length of what you need in your composition. Before we go on, I wanted to briefly talk about the bonus loops that are included in the library. Those are pre-recorded performances that are tempo mapped to the tempo of your digital audio workstation, and as such have flexibility in how you can use them in your projects. What we have selected here is the bonus 120 beats per minute. Now, again, that doesn't mean that your tempo in your project has to be 120 beats per minute. That can vary. And what I've done here is to demonstrate that I set up different tempos, 80, 90, 100, tempo settings so that we can step through them and demonstrate what we're talking about. So as I'm playing this back, I'm also going to step back and forward in speed so you can see how the library and the loops are adjusted to that. You have a massive number of different articulations or better performances that you can make use of and quickly adapt to your project. All of them are a little different in what they are performing. And as you see, there is a wide variety of different loops that are mapped across the keyboard, which is true for all of these. And now in each instrument group section, you also have then variations of that specific performance that you can use. So let's talk about the user interface. If you have other HDO libraries of late, then you're very familiar with what you see here on the screen, but I'll go through this anyhow. Of course, up here you have the instrument groups, where we already talked about selecting the articulations. The sequencer is down here. Now, the sequencer is something that can be used very creatively in a number of different ways. Once I turn this on, then what you see, these bars down here represent notes that are being played. So if I'm hitting a particular key, whatever is here in this sequencer is then being triggered. The height of these bars represent the velocity. So if I'm bringing this up, and you can paint this in here by yourself, you can tell that now we have a rather large velocity value here, which is indicated by the number that you see here on the screen as well. And then, of course, the sequencer will trigger these notes based on what you have. If you want to turn off a note entirely, then you just simply bring the velocity all the way down like this. You can alter the length of what is being played by clicking on these blocks up here. So here we would have a length of 4 beats. And since we have a 16th value selected here, then you would hear very rapid notes being played back like this. One interesting thing here is we have a couple of things. If you want to start right from scratch, right from the beginning, then you can simply click this button and everything will be returned to the standard value of 100 up here. And so all velocities are the same. And again, you can paint something in if you want, or something that is very interesting. In fact, you've seen me use this, and you might want to use this as well. This is a very creative tool. You just randomize it. Here you go. Now, one thing that needs to be noted is that since the sequencer determines the velocity of how hard a key is being pressed, so to speak, or how loud a note is being played back, it doesn't really matter how hard you're hitting the keyboard itself, or in your DAW, you're triggering that sequence by holding down a particular note. It doesn't really matter because the sequencer takes over and determines what that velocity value is. Clicking here, you can drag this up or down, and this will then change the value or the resolution of that sequence. So here we have quarter notes, and then of course we can go up to the eighth or the 16, how we had it. Down here, you can produce triplets in that same bar, and this is what it sounds like on that same sequence. So you have a number of options here that make for a very creative tool that I'm sure you will enjoy quite a bit, especially when you are in a pinch and you have to create something very quickly. This helps you out quite a bit. The next segment I want to talk about is the three sections down here: envelope, effects, and EQ. The first one is your typical ADSR for attack, decay, sustain, and release manipulation. What I've done here is I've taken my automation CC controller 21 here. You can pick whatever you want and just to basically learn it. And that allows you to then directly control from your keyboard or any kind of controller these particular values. So for example, if I wanted to cut down the sustain on my signal, on my sample, then I am simply just manipulating this controller. So as you're holding down the key, then the sample just basically drops off quickly. And as I'm bringing that back up, then of course it plays out the whole sample, including the room that you hear. The same or something similar in that fashion is the release. So when I am hitting the key and letting go quickly, then this determines how quickly that sample is then decaying, so to speak. How you can use this is in a mixing fashion where you have too much of the room, for example, in your audio and your percussion, in this case, for the dhol, and you can bring that back into a more controlled fashion. Now, the next two sections here, the effects and EQ, and there's something very important that needs to be pointed out. We have the effects tab down here, which is your access to our chaos effects, where we have the filter, the EQ, degrader, delay, transform, and reverb. Now, once again, the transform and the reverb are both convolution effects, the reverb being more a traditional convolution reverb, and the transform a more creative one. Both of them have impulse responses that they're using in just different ways. Anyways, what you need to make sure is if you want to control any of these effects here that are listed, for example, the EQ, you need to make sure that it is enabled in the chaos effects rack. Let's have some fun with the effects section again. Now that we have everything connecting to our chaos effects rack, we can make changes here and they will alter specific effects that we have. Now, One thing that I want to point out to you is a couple of things. If you're making changes here and you simply just want to return back to where you were at the beginning to a default setting, simply just click on this recycle button here and that'll set everything back up. At the same token, the randomize button here, the question mark, will dial in specific settings that are just totally random and may create some rather interesting effects. So I'm going to play this back and I'm going to play a little around with these settings here and see what we can come up with.